All right, well, good morning. I'm pleased to be here this morning to give you a quick update here on MAPS 3. Just a quick background here. If you remember, it's $777 million on 8 projects, tax collection, 7 years, 9 months, and it began April 1st in 2010. And currently the collections are ahead of projections. The projects that we have is the downtown park, trails and sidewalks, the transit modern streetcar, convention center, senior health and wellness centers, Oklahoma State Fairgrounds improvements, and improvements at the river. We'll start off with the park. It's $132 million is set aside for that project. 40-acre upper park and a 30-acre lower park. You can see basically how it's split. It'll be done in different phases. There's the basic layout of the upper and lower park. You can see the upper park in green, lower park in the red. It's basically split between the new I-40 alignment. We're currently working on the upper park. The lower park isn't set to start until 2014. Right now, we've acquired approximately 95% of the land for the upper park. The demolition for the post office has been completed except for the little maintenance facility that will be done towards the end of the year. We have engaged Hargraves and Associates to do the master plan in phase 1 of this project. We had some very successful public meeting 2 weeks ago and some focus groups that we've already started. Very pleased with how that's come about. And phase 1 construction will begin in summer of 2013. And the streetcar, $128 million project to put a rail-based streetcar through downtown. Right now, the subcommittee has recommended a route that you have seen. Santa Fe Station has been recommended as the transit hub. We're currently trying to negotiate purchase of that. Jacobs Engineering has been engaged as our consultant for the program, and we're working with them various parts of the streetcar. This is the alignment that the subcommittee recommends, like I said, that you have seen. You can see that it engages the Chesapeake Arena, the convention center site, and the park, and down over to Bricktown, then on up to Midtown. Convention Center, $252 million project. Here's the site that we're working on right now. The acquisition of the property is underway. We're presenting today to the subcommittee recommendation to authorize us to negotiate a contract so that we can get started, and we'll have a consultant on board. And once we get this consultant on board, then we'll have all the players in place that we can start with these coordination meetings that have been talked about so much. Oklahoma River is a very exciting project. $57 million will be done in 4 phases. We've already started the race course lighting. That is under construction. The windscreen is in design, and we're getting ready to do interviews for phase 2, which is the additional starting systems, lighting, docks, race course cameras. Excuse me. And we're also right now in design with the whitewater facility, which I think is going to be a very, very exciting project down there. So like I said, we've got a lot of people working on river projects right now. Whitewater facility is scheduled to open in October of 2013. State Fairgrounds, $58 million for projects out there, relocation of the carnival area, and then an exposition building. Phase 1 is underway. They just completed observations of the fair operations as they went just last week. So we'll be getting the master plan back that will show us how they best to relocate the carnival area, and then we'll soon be engaging a consultant for the exposition center so that we can help coordinate that with the new building.
And back to that, we actually awarded the contract today for the civils grading package that's out at the fairgrounds.
Correct. Health and wellness centers, been talked about a lot, $52 million for as many as 4 centers. the architect has been selected to do the design. Once we select where we're going to do and what we're going to do, this week we're reissuing the RFP to the subcommittee for them to review so that they can, well, so that we can reissue that to the public so we can get our operating partner on board. There, like I said, there's been a lot of talk about that. So hopefully we can get that back out on the street and get an operating partner engaged. Trails and sidewalks, $39 million for trails. We basically have four trail projects that we have right now. We're working on the first one, which is the river trail, which goes from Meridian all the way out to Lake Overholser. We have 2 engineers working on 2 phases of that, and it's well underway, and we should be acquiring right-of-way here soon for that project. Sidewalks, $9 million for sidewalks. Subcommittee will receive another version of the master plan, and it will be up for them to decide how we're going to proceed on the sidewalks that you've seen. The project implementation plan has the timeline. We're still adhering to the timeline. I'm sure you're familiar with that. It's continuing with subcommittee meetings, advisory board meetings, and just proceeding with the project as we're supposed to. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
David, going back to the slide on the transit, could you the map basically shows a line from, you said, the Chesapeake Center to the park. Is this the rail system?
Yes, sir. That's the preferred route that the subcommittee has recommended.
What's the farthest north?
I believe it goes all the way up to 13th Street.
So it looks like that 70% of what I would identify as far as points of destination from point A to point B of one destination to another destination, being the park, the convention center, the gardens, are really, walkable. I mean, if you're only just going up to then to 13th Street, but it just seems like that's not what a real rail would provide as far as a real service need of transportation. It just seems like that's more of area that a person could walk easily, but I just want to get a clarification. The other issue that I have is the sidewalks, and that I recall that when we was presented the list from the subcommittee, that I had an issue because there wasn't any listing of sidewalks in Ward 7. And has that been revisited? If not, I will continue to make that, to advocate for that issue, because I think that whoever's looking at the sidewalk issues, that there is something that's being left out. And a big part of it, as it relates to some parts of these wards, that I think is just, disingenuous to not engage the density issues of some of the areas that sidewalks definitely need to be a part of. So,
what is the status of that report, David?
It's going back to the subcommittee tomorrow.
But what has been done is we've taken a less conservative cost estimate. They had a very conservative cost estimate. They came up with those numbers. We've gone with a more moderate cost estimate on it, which has expanded the miles in some of the areas to be covered.
Mm-hmm. Is it going to be, though, more inclusive of the 8 wards, or is it more wards than was originally put out?
What we have right now is the same process that we had before. It's based on the criteria, and as those alignments, as we're calling them, come out, that's what we're going with. So we're not, at this point, we haven't broken it out equally per ward. It's just how it falls.
Does the less conservative approach allow us to do more projects that would allow more wards to be involved?
It does somewhat, but still there are some wards that have more needs. The inner city wards have higher scores than the outlying wards do.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll await the report.
Your Honor?
Yeah, Larry?
And I've talked to Jim about this before, and I agree with Councilman Kelly. Ward 3 also has some challenges as far as the number of miles. And the original intent, when this first came out on the Maps 3, it was my assumption that we were going to divide the number of miles of sidewalks evenly throughout the city so that all the taxpayers would receive some benefit. Obviously, there can't be a sidewalk in front of every school or every public facility or every neighborhood, but I think some attention needs to be given in these early phase, Jim and Mayor, to kind of making this an even geographic split on the sidewalks.
We hear you.
I will make sure the subcommittee knows that.
All right.
Yeah,
Ed?
I want to speak to what Skip talked about on the route. I went to a transit summit last week in California with some of the nation's thought leaders, and several of which were familiar with what we're trying to do here. And certainly I got contradictory feedback, but clearly there's a couplet is controversial. I mean, to go one way on this street and then have to walk over to the other street and go back. I mean, some are okay with it, most weren't, but it's certainly controversial. And you know, one individual who I would consider a nation's thought leader told me that he thought we would struggle with ridership, and that really we needed to think of this more as a real estate development tool than necessarily a transit system, that maybe it's a first step to a transit system. But real estate development is at least as much a consideration as ridership in the beginning, and he thought we would struggle with that. I talked with the gentleman who developed the nuts and bolts of the Portland streetcar, and he thought similar thoughts. So I guess one question would be, how was this route developed? I mean, is it the subcommittee? I mean, did we have consultants study this route?
This route was done through the subcommittee. It was also done through, I believe, the alternatives analysis. But remember that we've got Jacobs Engineering on now, and one of their first and main tasks is to go through this alignment and verify that this is what we should be doing based on a lot of things, based on utility conflicts, based on some ridership, but also a lot on the economics and the development potential in the area.
Mm-hmm. So that is in their scope of work.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, just because it can't be said enough, it needs to be based on cost, because if you look at, there's kind of three standards for rail-based projects. They cost more than you thought, they take longer to build than you thought, and ridership is higher than you expected. Those are kind of three standards around the country. But there are no more dollars with MAPS 3. This is a finite amount of money, and I don't think we can say it out loud enough to that consultant that do not start building something we can't afford to finish.
Yes, sir.
And maybe a fourth component, Mayor, is O&M. I mean, when do we start having a conversation about what it costs to maintain this streetcar system, to maintain the park, to
That's also
maintain the
part
river?
of the Jacobs contract as far as the streetcar is. They are going to produce that kind of information. And then also with the Hargraves contract, they have operational people within their team that they're going to be providing that for us.
So you would expect, as we move through the next 6 months, to start to have a clearer picture of what our total O&M is going to be for all the convention center, park, streetcar, river, all of which presumably are going to come out of the general fund.
I do. I'd say between 6 and 12 months is for the streetcar and for the park.
Okay.
River, we anticipate, remember there's a resolution being adopted to have the Boathouse Foundation do the operations on the river.
Okay. How much ahead of projections are we right now?
Approximately 9% is our last report.
And we've collected 190 million?
The July 31st report is 210.
Okay, so we're almost 20 million ahead of projections in terms of collection?
I don't know if that's total, Councilman. I just know the last few months, we've been getting 9 to 14.
Doug, let's let Doug answer that.
Yeah, I don't have, I was just looking at the figures yesterday. I don't have them with me, but we're in the range of $10 million over projections at this point, with still a number of years left to go. So.
Yeah.
Let me ask you one more question on the Jacobs doing, because another warning that I was given last week was, don't, and this goes back to the silos and integration. It's not just integration with the other MAPS 3 projects, but integration with our bus system, with the total public transit system. How does the streetcar interface with our bus system? Will it replace some routes? How can they work together? And so, will Jacobs, COPTA, how did those two entities talk to each other in terms of planning route and planning economies of scale, and how those two systems are going to work together?
Fortunately, Jacobs is very familiar with COTPA and Rick's group, so we'll make sure that all that is also coordinated.
Okay.
I can't tell you right now.
COPTA attends every modern streetcar subcommittee meeting.
Okay. But final thing on sidewalks. I mean, I would take issue with the contention that it should be split throughout the ward evenly. I don't think the need is there evenly. We're not splitting trails. Just the component we talked about on trails in Ward 3 a couple of weeks ago dwarfs, basically is a huge amount of the entire budget. So trails are not being split evenly throughout the wards, and that's a much bigger budget than sidewalks. We went 40 years in this city. We didn't build any sidewalks from 1960 to 2000. And I think you need to take a look at where that development was in that 40 years. So I think it needs to be need-based and not just evenly distributed.
Okay. All right. David, thank you.
Thank you.